Sahana Vavatu, Sahanao Bhunaktu, Sahaviryang Karavavahai, Tejasvina Vadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let's revise chapter 2 since we are only on verse 67. So let's get a quick refresh. In chapter 2, verse 1, we stated that Sanjaya was reporting to Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra is the king of Hastinapur, and Sanjaya is his consort, his third eye. And Sanjaya is able to see everything that's occurring in this remote place on Kurukshetra. And Kurukshetra is not just an external place, it's also an internal place, or the Kurukshetra of life. It's the place where you have to make decisions and you have to, have to refine your responses. And every time you receive something from the world, then you receive feedback. And this feedback never fails you. Everyone receives feedback in some way or the other. Asha, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say pranam. Today is Guru Purnima. So
thank you. Today is Guru Purnima. Purnima is a full moon. It is also Vyasa Purnima, because Vyasa is considered one of the greatest sages, at least in the Vedic tradition. So we honor all of our acharyas, our gurus, our teachers, in whatever capacity they have held us in, in our times of impatience, in our times of mistakes. They have stood their ground and they have supported us and have made us who we are today. And this has extended for eons. All those teachers who we don't know, who we never met, all of those rishis who dedicated their entire lives to helping you and I find the final truth to the Gita and to the Vedas. And therefore, we pay homage to these lovely individuals who have dedicated their lives. Sanjaya then says that to Dhritarashtra that Arjun is in a state of great distress. He is undergoing an emotional turmoil, and this is understandably so, because life is not so linear. It doesn't always give you exactly what you want. And in fact, it's not supposed to give you exactly what you want, because life is not designed to make you happy. It's just designed to accommodate the needs of all people. And because we all have different needs, it's not possible that two sides of a soccer match win. It's going to be one side or the other. So in that same way, it's not always true that you're supposed to get what you want. Sometimes you're going to get less. Sometimes you're going to get more. Sometimes you're going to get totally opposite. And sometimes you're going to get exactly what you want. So these are the four possibilities that are possible. You get exactly what you want. This is what we all want. This is a kind of like the ideal utopian dream. Or you can get totally opposite. That means it's totally nothing like you expected. They don't sound like the way that you thought. They don't look like the way you thought. They're not keeping with your expectations. They're not kind of, having the conduct that you expect. They don't have the same kind of knowledge. They're not relating to you. They come from a different culture. They look different, they smell different, everything's about them different. And it's like, whoa, this is too much for me. So this is part of accommodation. Accommodation is the capacity to understand that everyone here is just trying to meet their needs. This is a common human behavior. You are just trying to meet your needs all day long, all life long. I am just trying to meet my needs all lifelong. This is not something that is individual to everyone. It is a cross-cultural, cross-time, past, present, and future. You're just trying to meet your needs, and those needs you understand what they are. And if someone doesn't quite meet those needs, then there is a tendency to, sometimes go off track, or the knowledge escapes you for a moment. And then you have to do the best that you can to bring yourself back to the knowledge. And this is a consistent effort that has to happen not that it has to happen, but whenever you remember, you bring yourself back to the knowledge, keeping with the principles that you've learned. So it's not like you come to class and then you read the Gita and then you read the book and then that's it. The knowledge tends to escape us. And this knowledge, whenever it escapes us in those times of those other two, when you get opposite to what you want, or you get less than what you want, never mind more and exactly as you want, that's no issue. But it's the opposite and less of. So those two, whenever they come, right, whenever they manifest, then you have to do whatever you can to bring your mind back. How? That is not really a question of how. Everyone's got their own personal style, personal strategy, personal ways of bringing their mind back. So it's not really a question of how, because every personality is going to have a different way of doing so. So if I tell you the how, it may apply to one person in the class, but it may not apply to everyone. So therefore, Arjun is perhaps he's experiencing totally opposite to what he expected, because he thought, I'm going to be confident and I'm going to be, knowing what to do. I'm a warrior. Or he got much more that he can handle. So these two realities are confronting Arjun, confronting anyone at any moment. And Arjun couldn't contain himself. He couldn't come back and find his ground, find his center. And this is not just pertinent to Arjun, it is pertinent to every person. It can be pertinent to you and I at different stages of life. And it's not always true. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. So it's not like just because Arjuna cannot handle or cannot compose himself in this situation of life, it doesn't mean that he's or she's exactly the same at work or exactly the same at home. Sometimes at work, you have a certain conduct about yourself and you know what to do because it's so easy and right, the rules are laid out and it's very clear. But when you come home to someone that is close to you, to whom you have an emotional connection with, then it's very different. Then it's not about rules, follow rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, but there is now a dynamic playing out, which consists of many more nuances than you will find at your workplace. Therefore, your conduct can change, but also the way that you handle yourself has to change. So like this, Arjun starts to weep because he is not able to compose himself. And to this weeping Arjuna, Krishna begins to speak, which is fine because this is how it is in real life. When you go to a therapist, for example, and you're describing your situation and you begin to go through an emotional time because you're connecting with what is bothering you. And the therapist will then have to say something to connect with the weeping client. Therefore, who goes to a therapist when they're super happy? Hey, therapist, I'm just experiencing so much joy recently. My God, it's a burden, I can't handle it. It's just, I'm so happy. No one does that. So we go to Krishna when we want to untangle some knots which have been not quite straight. We cannot see what is to be done. So in verse 2 and 3, Krishna is then going to reply to Arjuna, and he surprises him. He urges him, number one, he urges Arjuna to compose himself. That's the first thing he says. Hey, Mr., Mrs., I know what you're going through. I understand what you're going through, but ultimately, what has to be done has to be done. Now, this is very interesting because if you think about it, in this moment, Arjuna, if he had incredible amount of faith, and even faith, there's degrees of faith, but if he had an incredible amount of faith, he could have said, okay, since you're Krishna, you're the Lord of the universe, if I were to go through 18 chapters with you, I would ultimately do what is to be done. So I don't have to go through the 18 chapters because I trust your word. You're telling me, you're advising me to go and do what is to be done, right? Go and do your studies, go and inquire into reality, go and think about think about the connections of things think about how there's an interconnection, the web that's connecting us all. And I just say that is what the scriptures say. And you say, I trust you, right? You've obviously gone through this yourself. You've kind of, you've gotten the results. It's worked for you, and I trust you. And therefore, I will do it. This will be a utopian dream, I tell you. It's like this simple, like, okay, simple. Like the student just says, okay, I trust you. If I were to go and listen to the 17 chapters of the Gita, I would go and do what is to be done. I would go do it. But most are not like that. They say, well, can you explain how? Can you help me out here? Can you just, help me work through this? And then the therapist or Krishna has to help out the student or the patient for several sessions. And these sessions can last years. So in this case, Arjun was on the second end. He said, well, I know what is to be done, Krishna, but I still cannot do what is to be done. I need you to help me understand why is it that I need to do this.
Just an observation, Andre. Just going back to chapter 1 and the class that you guided us through was probably one of the more humane explanations of the human condition, compared to some of the commentaries I've read, where they have been quite brutal in, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, he's got Arjuna-citis. He's just raving about something that is not true. And these are commentary from some of the masters like, Chinmayananda and all that. Were pretty brutal about the assessment of the human condition. And, I was very heartened by your more humane approach towards it. And someone challenged me and said something about, is Vedanta or the Vedas trauma-informed? And, I can't remember, was it verse 2 or 3 when Krishna, pokes at Arjuna, challenges his manliness. How can I respond to that when someone says the Vedas or Vedanta is not trauma-informed?
Is not trauma.
Trauma-informed. So, Arjuna was obviously having this despair.
Right.
And, Krishna poking him out of that stupor says, challenges his manliness. Right. And I'm also reflecting on some of the commentaries that some of the masters have said that were, pretty much not very trauma-informed. How can I respond, to someone who says that Vedanta is not trauma-informed?
Trauma-informed. Well, yeah. First of all, what does trauma-informed mean? What I understand is it's a manifestation of my inner pressures arising outwards because I'm unable to contain them within myself. And the easiest way to express them, because it hurts to contain it within, is to express it outwards.
Yes.
Well, this is a universal condition. It's not just Vedic times. It's not just, kind of today. It's all throughout. There is a trauma, whether it is from this lifetime, whether it is from other lifetimes, it comes out somehow. So what the Gita wants to show you is that until this trauma gets a healthy chance to come out in a way that is supportive, not in a way that, oh, this is all useless and, do your duty, forget about your trauma, but it has a chance to come out and to reframe it, to see that it had its part. And now, as an adult, it no longer has its part to play, right? I have, more things to do in life, and I cannot let this trauma hold me back, because every day you're a new, fresh person. And a new, fresh person deserves a new, fresh chance. So as long as I'm attaching all of these old people onto this present person, then whatever trauma belongs to these old people is going to hold and pull down this person of today. So what the Gita says first is that, which is why we say it's a yoga shastra. It's not just, Brahma Vidya, self-knowledge, but you have to first look at all of these unsurfaced emotions, unsurfaced distortions, patterns of thinking, which when I think about the reality, they have no chance but to get mixed up. They get mixed up with all of the trauma that the person's holding up. Therefore, all of the thinking about reality also gets distorted because the trauma is pulling it down. It is filtering it. It is distorting it. So how do you respond to that? Well, we have to bring it back down to an ordinary human condition, which is why I don't think that the commentaries deserve to be brutal, because it is like it's like a therapist describing a person today, a patient, who is being brutal about their life, who's being brutal about their treatment of either family, or there's some, marriage situation. And you say, you're brutal, the whole thing is just brutal. So it's very nuanced in nature. And it takes a lot of time to help the individual come to ground, come to the senses, to capture all of those subtleties that have been missed out all this time, because my mind was on my own expectations, my own kind of like assuming what needs to happen, what has to happen for my own health, for my own well-being. So when the person's got this huge voice of this needs to happen my way, not any other way, then what happens is you cloud out every other door of thinking, of opportunity gets closed, because I can only see my own little narrow vision through a little hole. And therefore, that hole needs to open up. And that hole is called trauma, what you speak of. That hole is called unresolved, distorted thinking, through which I can only see a little bit. I cannot see all around me. So first step, we need to dissolve or soften up all of that little, those biases that a person carries, those prejudices, those likes and dislikes, those shouldisms. Here's how it should be. Here's how I want it to be. Here's how I don't want it to be. As I said, life doesn't work like that. Life is just accommodating everyone's needs. And thereby, I have to have a certain accommodation for every character in the Mahabharata, including Dhritarashtra. Hey, Dhritarashtra, just he's blind, right? He's blind, full stop. Come on. Everyone experiences blindness every once in a while. One may experience blindness in reference to their kids, right? Their kids have a certain need for, expressing themselves. And then the parent can be blind in reference to that, because the parent has this idea how I want my children to be. So then the parent pulls their kids inside a little frame of what you should be. You should have a doctor's degree or be an engineer and all of this stuff that you've heard before a million times. So even a parent can be a Dhritarashtra. Even your boss or manager can be a Dhritarashtra at times. You know something and you want to communicate that clearly. And the one to whom you're speaking to, your superior, is in that moment not available to hear what you're saying. And it's very easy to dismiss them and say, oh, they don't just get it. And then again, we put them inside the little box. Now that becomes my own blindness, doesn't it? So what I have to do is I have to be patient. Hey, maybe they're not receptive to listening to the whole big picture today. Maybe I have to give them some time, and I will rephrase what I have to say some other time. So when someone challenges you, you have to ask yourself, number one, what is it that, is there any chance, number one, is there any chance to have some informed opinion about the matter? Because what happens is when we come or clash, with two opinions clash, which you probably experienced many times, then there's this kind of a thing that I want to preserve what I know, and I'm not going to budge. And they also have the exact same, I'm going to preserve and protect what I know, and I'm not going to budge. Now, if you're in that situation, is there any chance of a productive conversation taking place? No. You're just going to both walk away more convinced in what you already know. There was no learning, no progress. And not only that, but there's a separation, an invisible wall of separation or unfriendliness created between two parties. So the question always comes is that in this moment, when I'm being challenged, no matter who it is, even if it's someone that's authoritative and knowledgeable, you have to ask yourself, in this moment, am I receptive to receiving this knowledge? If not, I have to communicate that honestly and say, look, I honor your opinion, but I just cannot agree. And I want to just share my opinion. And I'm also interested in your side of the story. I want to hear what you have to say. So the moment we open ourselves up and want to hear another person's perspective, what you're saying to yourself is, I have evolved enough that I am open to different perspectives, open to different ways of receiving information and helping myself, because maybe there is something here to know. Maybe if it's not about who's right or wrong, then at least we can develop a better relationship, because you will probably need that person in the future.
So the trick is then back to the client or the patient to be receptive and to let go of the biases and to be willing to have those biases that they have that contains their trauma, to be receptive to an alternative point of view.
Well, see, the biases may continue, they may persist, and so it's not always about kind of helping them remove their biases, but you have to weave your way through to see where they're coming from and see what common ground do I have with this person's opinion. Because the first reaction is to find something against and then go on that thread of conversation. So what the intelligent person does is they find first, number one, find common ground. What can I agree with right now? Let's find out what can we both agree, even if our opinion is vastly different on the surface. Where is that one small commonality? If I can't find it, then it's my fault. So it's my duty to, number one, find common ground. Where can we talk? And start from there. Until that happens, no progress, no connection can take place. So even in a relationship, this is like the key to, a healthy relationship. What commonality do we have right now? What needs do we both have right now? Do we even know what our needs are? There was a very interesting, I know you got hands up. There was a very interesting thing on religious disputes. Actually, no, it was racism. It was in USA. There was a thing about racism. And back in 30 years ago, when you had that whole KKK, a black man, he became friends with the leader of KKK. And this was like one of those times when it was, just extreme racism. And it could be even more than 30 years ago. And this black man, then later on, he had something very interesting to say, and that stuck with me. He said that initially, when two parties come together and there's absolutely nothing that you can relate with, it's just totally different, then what he said is that the most important thing is to continue the conversation going. Don't stop the conversation flowing. The moment the conversation stops, that's when two parties walk away, right, with their own opinion, solidified even more with some form of resentment towards the other side. So the way that he was able to persist being friends with this leader, a white leader, the KKK, was he continued the conversation based on common ground. What do we both have a need for? We both have a need for empathy, for having, being accommodated of our differences. We both have a need to be seen, to be heard, to be admired, to be seen for who we are. And both of them, they could not disagree with that. And on the basis of those common needs, they were able to persist and have a relationship that lasted for years. So this is intelligent living, intelligent communication like this, Vig.
Isn't that, I mean, coming to the point of not having strong likes and dislikes?
Yeah, so likes and dislikes. See, okay. So there's one term in Vedanta that we call, right, raga dvesha. Raga is when you are highly magnetized towards something, like two magnets, right? It just pulls you innocently, and you kind of like, you're just so in love with it, you can't even explain why. It's just interesting. And this raga is okay. There's nothing wrong with raga. If you have a raga for certain kind of food, it's totally okay to be, attracted to it. But when it becomes an issue is when it starts to dominate over your life. That means it becomes such a voice, a repetitive voice, that it's like, I gotta have it. I gotta have it because I love it. I gotta have it. I gotta have it. I gotta have it. And it overrides all common sense, right, reasoning. It says, I can't go without this. So it becomes a potential distraction. So in that case, I have to redefine what is my loss by having a consistent need for going towards something that may not be absolutely essential. It may not be absolutely essential to constantly be on the phone, checking messages, It is not absolutely essential, but I may have an extreme raga for that, an extreme like for that. So the way that we can reduce that is we have to ask ourselves, what is my loss? What am I losing out by constantly having the need to go on my phone and check again and again? And can I just not ever be like, just for myself for a moment, being with the environment and listening to the sounds? So you have to understand, what are you losing out? And I can definitely tell you what you're losing out. What are you losing out? You tell me, by constantly having a need to check the phone impulsively, even though there's no real reason to.
Appreciating the now, just the stillness in the moment,
Okay.
and all that beauty that.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not with the moment. What else? There's many reasons. There's a lot of loss by constantly checking the phone and messages and emails and seeing who sent you what. What else is your loss?
Disconnection from self.
Disconnecting from from what's going on here, because you need time to feel in what is it that I'm feeling right now. And if I don't settle with that long enough, then I just don't have a chance to connect with what's going inside this amazing instrument. What else is your loss, Gautam?
I think
time and energy.
Time, effort, and energy, of course. It's just all over the place. What else is your loss?
You disconnect to the wisdom of all things that are around, like it's like an addiction that's just taking you away. I just did a 6-day no phone moment, and that was incredible. Like it was I was reading, I was painting, I was listening and being and so it's like the drug of the nation, the mobile phone. It's losing that beautiful connectivity of divinity, of the divine intelligence.
And what stood out for me now is that Ricky's friend is that you said you were painting, you were allowing your creativity to come through. Yeah. So it's like you say, Mike, I'm not creative. I don't have the skills to do this. Well, of course not, since we're constantly distracted by this and this and this and this. So if you just give yourself that time, that focus, you will be absolutely shocked how much incredible skills would come out of your mouth, out of your hands, out of your feet, out of your torso, dancing, out of all of things that you are endowed with. Mm. So the phone constantly keeps that suppressed. And what kind of a self-esteem does one end up having? It costs you self-esteem, costs you creativity, costs you time, energy, effort, costs you focus, costs you concentration, costs you connection to yourself.
Yeah, and nature.
It costs you just admiring what is.
That's right.
Which is all about what Vedanta is trying to show you, what is.
Yes.
So
Hello.
every time I grab my phone, I am disconnecting from what is, and I'm putting myself inside my little private little bubble. Let me see what's there. No, never mind you. You don't exist right now in my world. It's only me and my phone. It's like that. The costs are huge. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with likes or dislikes. Dislikes are the same thing, right? Aversions. If I have a strong aversion for something, then I have to ask myself, what is the cost? There's nothing wrong with having an aversion for a colleague who you don't get along with. But when it becomes problematic is when the aversion turns into a new word called hate. That means I so don't like them that they literally decrease the quality of my life. And that takes over at home. I think about it in the car. I think about it at moments when I'm alone. It just becomes like an overpowering thing. And all you really want to do at the end of the day is just to be happy.
Yeah, the loss of this distraction on the phone or whatever, I think it also plays with your emotion, right? You're just getting carried away with what you see, changing your emotions from one to the other depending on what you're seeing. So as you said, you're losing the real you, which is what you want to experience and probably confront it. People use it as a way of distracting themselves from something that's going on in their life, but you have to face it. There's no choice.
Yeah, you have to face it. And that, yeah,
it doesn't help, I think.
It doesn't help. And you know, I think we can all sort of relate to this, that yeah, at the beginning it may be kind of an uncomfortable thing to not touch and not keep up to date. But if you just take out a book or a piece of paper and just let whatever nonsense come through, it is better in some ways than just passive browsing, passive, looking, using the senses just to look at pixels, colors of pixels changing one after another. How many of them? 60 million pixels keep on changing all day long. And then you say, how was your day? Well, I just had pixels change before my eyes. Therefore, this is inquiry. This is what it means to just ask themselves, what is my loss? See, there's nothing wrong with likes and dislikes, only when they start to steal your humanity away from you. Your God-given divinity gets stolen, robbed away by devices, by gadgets, by too many friends, by too many phone calls, by too much distraction, too much Netflix, too much YouTube. Your God-given right, which nothing can override, nothing can come even above, that gets robbed by small objects. So there's a certain responsibility that everyone needs to say, hey, this is fine. This is all fine. I'm not saying I'll go throw it out. Otherwise, no one logs in next week. Everyone's throw out the laptops. But you have to be just, right, understand what is my cost if I just keep on letting myself be exactly like everyone else. Flying to the airplane in Germany. Hey, everyone's on the phone. Because everyone's on the phone, I intentionally was not on my phone. In other words, I use a reminder what not to do. I see what people are doing and I say, don't do that. Don't be like every single other person doing the same thing. What did I do? I pull out my iPad and I start to write down notes. I start to write down what is important to me. What are my needs? What do I need more of in my life? What kind of a life do I want to live? What needs to be changed? What needs to get rid of? What do I want to bring more of in my life? What differences do I want to make in my life? Traditional piece of paper and pen, iPad or whatever, same thing. Write it down. Reconnect with writing, and that will trigger a whole different person out of you, and you'll be surprised what will come out.
I think like if we give too much of time to ourselves, I think we'll be caught up into our mind, I guess.
Good point.
We'll be caught up into the unnecessary things, unnecessary overthinking loop. So
yeah, very good, very good. So Jatin is bringing another nuance to this, is that if the individual spends too much time thinking and inquiring, contemplating, the irony is you will go crazy, probably, or unstable, or unwell, emotionally unwell. Not crazy, but just not well. So this is why the Vedas does not reject karma, entertainment. Again, nothing wrong with entertainment, nothing wrong with security. But I have to know what is enough and what is just, more than I really need. So once in a while, yeah, you do need to, I mean, I'm not going to say what you need to, but once in a while, one can take a trip. One can take a holiday. One can, right, spoil themselves a little bit. One can go out with friends and get a little bit uncomfortable in those places that you usually wouldn't go to. One can, they're not restricted. Because if you restrict yourself and you say, no, I'm not allowed to, then are you really living a full life? If you're kind of like putting yourself into these like, only here I can, over here I can't. According to whom? Right? So we're not saying what you should and shouldn't do, just that life needs to be relatively balanced, relatively harmonious, relative, right, entertainment, little bit of, security, a little bit of course, not a little bit, but there is ethics, there is knowledge. All of these things have to be have to be checked up, and which area is receiving too much work, too much time, and what area is suffering. Sometimes it's so easy, right? A man can sit down, a woman can sit down, and they get so engrossed in their work, they start to neglect relationships. And then you have to fix a broken relationship. And that costs you, again, pain. That costs you some time. So there's a relative balance that one has to maintain in their life. And through this, you manage all of these challenges that keep on coming and going, as Arjuna is having. Now, Krishna says, Arjun, I understand that you're going through this time, and right, just go and do what is to be done. It's very simple. Go over there and make the call, make the transaction, right? Go and make the sale. Just sell the product. Go and speak to the patient. Go and talk to your mom, to your dad. Just go. Just go and say sorry. Go and read chapter 1. Just do it. Simple, like the Nike, the Nike, just do it. So Krishna is being Mr. Nike right now. Just do it. But of course, this is not as simple as that. So Arjuna is unable to. And Krishna says that, right, you should, I mean, according to who you are, Arjun, you have the capacity to go and do what is to be done. Because the war, this conflict, has been going on for a long time. And now, when the moment has finally confronted you, you're saying, I can't, it's too much. And this is how depression happens, by the way. A depression, what is a depression? It's a series of buildup of thoughts. One thought, I'm not good enough, I can't, this is not working for me, no one likes me, this is too much for me. One thought. And then what happens? An associative thought comes. I'm not good enough. Thought 2, because, and then you find reasons in your life to support thought 1. Now you got 2 thoughts to deal with. Now 2 thoughts have more magnetic power than 1 thought. Now they attract a 3rd thought. I'm not good enough because, I cannot, articulate things well. And the reason why is because thought 3 now adds up. So what happens through the course of time is you have so many thoughts that have all kind of conglomerated into this one big basket, and all I can see is what is not working in my life. I've totally lost track of what is working in my life. I'm alive, I'm breathing, I've got doors of opportunities any moment. I can breathe, I can, any moment, look up online, look for solutions, any moment, all of that is available, and totally lost track of what is working. Therefore, Krishna is saying, hey, Arjun, I know about, hey, Arjun, you had these thoughts going on for 13 years. Not only that, you hadn't since a childhood. You were always, right, there was some conflict with 2 sides, Duryodhana and yourself, right? There was some conflict. And you had your whole life to look at and to resolve and to repair and to make course adjustments, to come back on track and do the right thing. And now when there is just no space to go away, this is when you're saying, I can't do it. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, you began this line of thought by talking about the need for Krishna to elucidate 18 chapters.
Yeah.
Instead of a single phrase solution for Arjun.
Good.
This means the Gita provides the best mind-action strategy mapping to solve a problem. Sometimes linearly, or sometimes cyclically.
Right, right.
Am I right?
Of course. So see, the Gita is a universal book. It's a book of solutions, and those solutions have to be expanded upon through a teacher, right? So if you just read the Gita, yeah, it's wonderful, but then you have to expand upon all of these and connect the dots. So in this sense, Krishna knows this, and because he's going to deliver a big discourse to Arjun, but Arjun, right, needs to hear it. He's unable to come out of his what you call it, his disposition, his despondency. That's the word, despondency. And therefore, Krishna says, okay, I will then help you come out of your despondency by elucidating what is to be done. Since you're unable to have enough faith in the teacher, then I will explain and I will persuade you. I will explain to you what is to be done and the reasons why it is to be done. Okay. Actually, it's a good thing that you point out, Bo. When I first, my first teacher was James, and he was the first person in Tirumavalai, that's where I met him, in Arunachala, who expounded the Bhagavad Gita 25 days. So all 18 chapters were selected verses for 25 days. And every teacher before, right, was a teacher, right, in their own way, but nobody quite put it together for me. It was all into pieces. No one shared these models, these prakriyas. They were all kind of dispersed. So no one really brought it together, as Bao is saying. It was all just like into little pieces. And I had nothing but faith in this teacher and in this teaching. I hardly heard of the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, of course, we all hear about it, but right, you never even open it. Like, what is this war, Krishna, Arjuna? You just, that's all you really hear. And I heard about these things. All I had was one thing, total, utter faith, Shraddha, in the teacher who I never met before and the Bhagavad Gita. That's all. Totally based on faith. I said, you know what? This sounds like it's making a lot of sense. It sounds like it's talking about things that are, right? Not that it sounds, I already had enough knowledge to discriminate what is what. But this is like so well put together, so well structured that this works. And I didn't even have the proof that it works, that it was any better than Buddhism or Taoism or many other things that I was into. It was total faith. I went home and I looked at the videos and the whole thing just, you know, second time when you watch it, the whole thing just made sense. I didn't kind of question like, oh, you know, but why is it like, oh, how do you compare it to this school of philosophy? Yeah, but this school of philosophy says this. Vedanta is wrong. I didn't do any of that. It was just, this is authority. This is what works. The reason why it worked so quickly, so well for me is because it was utter, pure faith, total faith. Just like in Tattva Bodha, we have sadhana chatushtaya, fourfold qualifications. And what was one of them? Shraddha. In other words, total, utter, unparalleled, unequivocal, uncomparable faith, trust in the teaching and the teacher, that this is working. This is well put together. There is no falsehoods, and I'm just going to do the best of my ability to live it. And it worked like magic. It worked so well, so quickly, so powerfully, so at once that things have not changed since then. The understanding has not kind of dwindled or even gone bigger or less. It was just once for all times, once and for all. Why? Because I have total trust. Not kind of like, oh, you know, I don't know anything. Not that, but just I want to understand. And Krishna says, go and do what is to be done. I'm going. I don't need to hear 18 chapters. I'm just going to go and do it. There are some people who are like this. If the student is like this, it's a wonderful thing because you don't have to tell them very much. They just trust. They go along. They think about what is being said and they follow, and it works like crazy. Others, you have to explain, you have to delve into little thoughts, you have to provide metaphors, allegories, illustrations, little by little. So there's no better or worse, it's just different styles. And so those different styles, the Bhagavad Gita has to accommodate all of them because personalities are many, students are many, and therefore the teacher has to accommodate all different styles. Okay. Now, in verse 4 and 5, Arjuna justifies his reluctance to fight, justifies his or her reluctance to do what is to be done. And how do they do this? They cite the scriptures. Now, Arjun, we don't know what scripture he was citing. I can only imagine it is Taittiriya Upanishad, chapter 1, verse 11, which says that revere your guru, revere your mom, your dad, and your guest, treat them as God. Maybe he was citing to that, Taittiriya Upanishad, chapter 1, verse 11. We don't know. Maybe it was the Manusmriti. We don't know what text he was citing. Either way, he was saying that one of the worst thing that you can do is to kill your teacher, to take the life of someone who has given you a life, to take the life of someone who has taught you the skills of archery, warfare, of proper conduct, of confidence. All of the things that you are today is because of that person. How can I possibly take the life of that person? So on the surface, this seems like a rational, understandable idea, and we can all relate to where Arjuna is coming from. The only thing is, there is a bigger picture that meets the eye that Arjuna is not looking at, but Krishna is in touch with. And so for this reason, Krishna understands that even though Arjuna is correct on the surface, he's missing out on the bigger picture. And because he's saying this, he's potentially philosophizing. Now, what does philosophizing mean? It means when you find some authoritative reason to justify your decision. For example, when two people come together in a marriage, then what happens is one of them starts to get complacent. That means, hey, we're now in a relationship, we're married, I don't have to do the same things as I used to because we're together, right? And so it seems initially like it's fine. But what happens is, as I started out this session, everyone has needs. Everyone is just trying to fulfill and meet their needs. So even if I'm with this person, if they suddenly stop meeting my needs, because a human being can go on for some time without their needs being met, what happens is that lack of needs being met becomes too painful. And what then happens is, slowly, anger or resentment starts to bubble within, and it starts to come out in passive-aggressive behavior, in complaining, in not being satisfied with the relationship, in giving these markers, right? This is not working, this is not working. And the other, being complacent, what do? Oh, it's okay, they start to philosophize. They start to say, hey, we're married, I have taken a huge vow to you, you should resolve your own stuff. The scriptures say everyone needs to take responsibility. So it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. But still, the need is not being met. So in other words, what the person has to understand is, just like for the one who takes a vow to be together, there is a certain responsibility that has been taken in that moment. And that responsibility needs to be lived up throughout the entirety of one's life. If it's not lived up, that's when conflict can arise. Just like someone who takes the life of a sannyasi or brahmachari, that means they're living by themselves. Equally so, what they're saying is, I take a certain responsibility to address my own emotions, to rely on my own knowledge, to rely on my own confidence. There is nobody there from whom I can feed confidence from. No one is there to help me, right, stand straight as a man or a woman in this world. Everything I depend on upon myself. And that person equally has a duty not to entertain lustful thoughts towards being with someone, no different than someone who's together to entertain thoughts of being alone for once in a while. Once in a while is fine, but being alone as in, right, I don't want this relationship anymore. So there's a certain responsibility that whether you're in a relationship or by yourself, that one needs to uphold, without which what happens is we start to, right, have our needs unmet, and those unmet needs transfer into unpleasant emotions, inner conflict. Should I go this way? Should I go that way? Do I want to be alone? Do I want to continue this relationship? Do I want to start a business? Do I want to work for this, be an employee? What do I want here? As long as that conflict is unresolved, it manifests in your experience as unpleasantness or discomfort. So it is Ishvara's indicator that something is not resolved within myself. So like this, philosophizing can throw us off, and then we can start to justify for a long time that our decision is the right course of action. Another way to justify, to philosophize, is to look at someone who is very successful and experience envy towards them. They have more money, they're in a higher societal position, they're a good speaker, they're able to articulate things well, they have more contacts, they have a certain kind of an aura, a kind of a, you know, what do you call it? A charm about them that makes people like them. And you look at them and say, you know, they're not that well educated. I've got more degrees and they're getting so much more attention. I'm envious of their success. And then you justify. You say, I don't like their wealth. They're rich. And then how do you justify this? You go, let me bring in the Bible. I'm going to say, you know, it's easier for a rope, not a camel. That was a misinterpretation of Hebrew text. It's easier for a rope to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to go to the kingdom of heaven. You see, they're kind of lost in their world of success, of their wealth. Me, I'm just an ordinary person who's going to be humble, and I've got a chance. I've got a much higher chance of attaining moksha. They don't have a chance of attaining moksha. Again, you philosophize. There's a channel on YouTube that I follow of a fella who goes to Texas, in USA, Texas, which is one of the highest rate of millionaires in Texas. And he wants to interview them randomly on the road. How does he find them? Because they're driving fancy cars. And when he interviews them, the kind of wisdom that comes out of them is amazing. And what they will speak of is values, just basic values that you learn in the Bhagavad Gita: humility, honesty, doing the right thing, providing concern about the customer's needs, attending to their needs when, you know, constantly making it about the customer, less about you. These are all Bhagavad Gita values. So our impression of rich people is, for the most part, it's wrong, it's incorrect. What makes a person successful, of course, there's always the other side, I understand that. What makes a person successful is they have a certain right conduct, a conduct of doing the right thing, doing what is to be done in their life. Concern about the customer, constantly refining the product. How else can this product improve the customer's life? Where else can I fulfill the customer's needs? Where else can I contribute that I'm not contributing right now? They're obsessed over the well-being of the other individual. Therefore, it's not true that a rich person is, unable to go to heaven. So what happens is, when a person philosophizes, is they bring these philosophies, but it's actually masking the insecurity within. And this insecurity, needs to come out. I need to acknowledge this insecurity so I can actually let it dissolve slowly. So the first step is to acknowledge I have an insecurity about myself as a person. I need to be honest about it. And this is what Vedanta is, just brutal honesty, number one. Rather than saying, I am beyond the whole world, I am Brahman. Okay, this is all true. It's absolutely true. But at the same time, first step is I have to acknowledge my need to be envious, my behavior of putting things into boxes and saying how it is. I need to acknowledge that, hey, I am doing this. It is not fair. And what I can do is I can have a little prayer and ask, oh Lord, please help me dissolve this behavior, because it is clearly not the right thing to do. I don't feel good by putting people into boxes. I don't feel good about it. So you have to be totally, brutally honest about yourself towards your own conduct. Why? Because there is a cost. As we said earlier, there is always a cost when I go against the laws of nature. When I go against dharma, there is a cost. And what is that cost? Discomfort. It always comes out as some form of an inner conflict or discomfort. And what you want is to be comfortable. That's all we're really seeking end of the day. So Vig, that fella who has challenged you, end of the day, what is it that you have in common with them? You just want to, right, connect with them. End of the day, it's just about connecting with this person and relating to something that you can both prosper. Both of you, end of the day, just want to connect to something. You're both desperately asking, what can we connect to in this moment? But it's clouded by all of this philosophizing, this, no, I know what what's the right thing to do. I don't agree. You have your own opinion. I've got my own opinion. All of this is just a cloud over a bigger need underlining both of you, which is, I just want to connect with you and I want to feel your presence and I want to feel that love between two individuals, because all that is here is Ishvara, God, and God is love. So in other words, what I'm really seeking at the end of the day is that connection between two people. And therefore, one has to, right, acknowledge where is this insecurity coming from, and start to open themselves up to the individual. Right now, I'm finding it hard to connect with you. And I really just want to, understand where you're coming from. So what something common can we find in this moment?
Sir, like when the situations are like not working or you are not getting a right perspective on the situation, so how can you pray and wait for the, like, how can you have a patience to to wait for the right answer? How can you have faith on God? You understood there is something fault in you, like you have some insecurity or you want some answer to some unresolved thing.
Got it.
And and you pray for the God. I'm not having the perspective, so please give me that.
Right.
So, and you immediately don't get the answer, right?
Of course you don't. No, never. Almost never.
Then how do you, like, so how do you wait for the answer? How do you have faith in God at that time?
Sure. So initially, see, I get where you're coming from, Jatin, because see, it's kind of like there's a good person who's doing the right thing and they're praying and they're, and their life is a little bit hard. And then you look at someone over there who's, cheating and just loud, just loud as possible. And they're forcing everyone to respect them. They're getting all of this attention. They're, cutting corners and getting their way. And you're like, here I am praying, this good person who's following the scriptures. It's like, and, they're totally like opposites. And they're just getting everything like that constantly. So, and it becomes really confusing because, you think, well, then where's God, right? Because God, if there was a God, God will be giving me a good life. But as we will see in this course, the network is very complex and it's very vast. And it may not seem like you're getting your answer immediately right now, but the answer, the actual fruit of the karma pala comes much, much later in ways that you cannot even imagine. And there's a story of this, Jatin. There were two boys, I shared it in class, coming back from the movies. And they saw a temple. And one of them wanted to go to the temple and pay reverence to God. And the other boy was an atheist. And they said, why are you going to the temple? There is no God. He doesn't listen. If he listened, then everyone will be getting exactly what they want. And the world will be in a much better place. Forget about this nonsense. You're wasting your time. And the other boy, was almost convinced. But his parents told him, go and pray. Just go and pray. Offer your prostrations to the Lord. And he went. Now, the other boy, the atheist boy, kept on going forward. Obviously, he didn't go inside the temple. And the other boy paid his prostrations, very short. And as he was coming down the stairs, he slipped and he hurt himself. He kind of sprained his ankle. And he, limped and caught up to the other atheist boy. And the atheist boy, meanwhile, found a little coin, a little golden coin. And he was so happy and exhilarated by this. And he said, wow, look at you, you paid prostrations to the Lord, and you come down and you slip and you almost sprained your ankle. And me, I don't have any belief in this nonsense, and I find a gold coin. You see, you're wasting your time. It's all just random. It's all just random. There's no order here at all. I find gold coin, you're wasting your time. And while he was saying this, the little boy who sprained his ankle almost got convinced. And he was like, yeah, you're right. Maybe I shouldn't pray anymore. But luckily, there was a sadhu, who means a good person. A sadhu means a good person, who was educated. And he overheard the two little Indian boys talking like this. And he says, hey, this is a very interesting conversation you're having. I just couldn't help but to notice. However, there's something that I see. I have a special siddhi. I can see the timeline. You see, the praying boy who came from the temple, because he had so much faith in the Lord, and it's not just that he prays in this life, he was praying in previous lifetimes also, because he had what's called punyam, that means good merit on his account, he could have fell and broke his leg, but he only sprained his ankle. And you, mister, who got a little coin, if you prayed, you would have found golden treasure, vast treasure, but you only found a golden coin. And the two boys thought about it. Wow. So we thought initially, right? It's like it's black or white. I find a gold coin, you pray and you fall down, therefore there is God, there is no God. We thought it was that black or white, but there is a much more complex order here that you don't recognize. And therefore, even the little fella who found the golden coin, it's not like he's got this papam all over the place. He's also got good merits on his account. That's why he found the golden coin. Because Ishvara doesn't need you to go inside a temple. You also do something towards the world in good ways. You go over to your mom, you hug your friend. Even if you don't believe in God, you still hug your friend. That is still an expression of love. So it's not like everyone has total demerit on their account. It's all just evil and someone's just all good. It's a mixture of both. And this mixture of both shows up in your life. How? Well, through the circumstances that unfold in your life. So every time you pray, Jatin, what you're doing is you're throwing a new cause into the universe. And every cause has an effect. That is just how it works. Because you cannot find one effect in this universe which doesn't come without a cause. In other words, every time I do a little ritual, a little puja, a little japa, a little prayer, what I'm doing is I'm contributing one more variable into the universe, into this network, and this network is obligated to return some effect to me in the future. How? It is beyond your and my scope of knowledge. Just like if you look at the story, there's no way you would have thought, right, how it worked out. But the boy didn't break his ankle because of all of the prayers he did before. And he thought, oh, there is no God. Otherwise, if there was God, I would have not sprained my ankle. So you see how we think black or white, but how much more complex it really gets?
With good karma accumulated over a period of time, maybe lifetimes before, and some selfless bhakti which is not demanding for goodies but for the love of God, you get Ishvara's anugraha.
Yeah.
Because of which I feel all of us are here on this channel, because there is some Ishvara's anugraha that has brought us here, that we are following this up. So your belief in God keeps getting more and more, with more Ishvara's anugraha, with more bhakti, with better karma, better vasana, more impression, and the cycle goes on for the goodness as also as it goes on for the bad and evil things.
This is Gautam, what he's saying is he's using some words that not all of us may be familiar with, because I know this is a new course. So Ishvara Anugraha is what we call in English Ishvara's grace. Now, what is Ishvara's grace? See, you say, how do I get Ishvara's grace? Well, it doesn't come to you randomly. Ishvara doesn't just sort of say, I like her, right? She's kind of cute. I'm going to like send her a thunderbolt of grace, and I'm going to make her life really cool. He's a little bit, he's negligent and this or that. I don't like him. I'm not going to give him any grace. Ishvara is impersonal. Impersonal means it is unbiased. In other words, if a rich man drops a cup and a saint or a poor man drops a cup, Ishvara doesn't say, a rich man can afford a cup, therefore I'm going to make a gravity work for the rich man. And the poor man, that's the only cup they've got in their life, I'm just going to cancel out gravity for them because they really need that cup to drink. Otherwise, they'll die. The gravity, which is nothing but manifestation of Ishvara, is going to equally work on the rich man and the poor man. So in this case, Ishvara doesn't judge and say, hey, this person, I'm going to exempt them because they're a good person. In other words, when an action that is not keeping with the laws, which is hurtful towards something or someone, no matter who does that action, there is a corresponding result. And when there is an action that is good in nature, that is keeping with the laws, no matter who does that action, there is a corresponding result. So this means you can have a business owner who keeps on lying and cheating and getting their way. The moment that business owner makes a little prayer, do you think Ishvara is going to now say, hey, they've been lying and cheating for 10 years. I'm not going to listen to their prayer. Do you think this is how Ishvara works? No. The moment, even if you've been like for 999 days, been cheating and lying, that one single day you start to have a little prayer and say, God, help me come to a little bit of my senses. The moment you make a prayer, no matter what kind of prayer it is, immediately Ishvara is obligated to respond to that. It doesn't say, oh, 999 days of bad track record. I don't think so. I'm going to cancel your one prayer out. It doesn't work like that. So Ishvara always responds consistently, no matter who does what. Ishvara doesn't care about your track record. The moment you make a decision to change your life, immediately you start getting Ishvara Anugraha. So in other words, Ishvara's grace, God's grace, what is that? It is a response to your prayer, to your effort to make a course correction in your life. That's why we say Ishvara's Anugraha, Ishvara's grace is earned. It's not randomly assigned, it is earned. And who earns it? You. How? Through actions keeping with the laws, doing what is to be done. And Arjun is unable to do what is to be done in this case. So he's unable to earn Ishvara's grace until he is taken out of this situation. Okay, so good, Gautam. Good putting it all together. Now in verse 6 and 7, Arjuna admits that he is not confident about what is to be done. He has clouded thinking, and he is misguided by two fundamental questions. And what are those two questions? Well, the first is situational question or situational matter. And he says, dharma samudha cheta. In other words, when it says the word dharma, what it really means is swa. Swa means your own personal duty. So everyone in life has a unique place in life. You have a very unique place in reference to your family. For example, as a daughter, as a son, as a mom, a dad, an employer, an employee, you have a very unique place no matter what position you play. So every role demands a certain new expression out of you. If you're working, there's going to be a different expression coming out of you than when you are with your partner or your loved one. So every role requires a certain, appropriate action keeping with that particular person or that particular situation. Now, what Arjuna is saying is that he's unable to get himself to see what is my swadharma, what is truly to be done in this course of life. There is life facing before me, and I'm unable to tell what is the best possible course of action that I can take in this moment, which will lead me to the greatest amount of Ishvara's grace and will make my life smooth, make my life comfortable, and allow me the space to do and express myself according to my strengths. I'm unable to tell what is the best course of action. Help me, Krishna. And we all experience this, like Arjuna. Arjuna is asking, is there some model in this world that I can follow, that if I were to follow it, it will guarantee success? And Krishna is probably going to say no, because no matter which model you get given, the situation always demands a new response. So it's not like there's this perfect model out there that if you follow it every single time is going to guarantee success. No, because the world is always giving you limited information. You never have total information at any one moment. Think about it. In any situation, in any confrontation, do you have all of the knowledge about this person? And does this person have all of the knowledge about you? And suppose this person is saying one thing and you're disagreeing. Do you, at any one moment, you don't have the total knowledge of what's going on? There was a prank on YouTube to demonstrate this. There was this guy who goes to gangs in USA, like, just hardcore gangs. And they're all, the guns and these dangerous fellas. And he goes up to them and says, hey, hey, boys, you want to smash? Serious face. Hey, boys, you want to smash? Like a real smash. They're like, what? You want to smash, my boy? Look like you want to smash. You're standing there on a corner. You want to smash. And this guy is getting so, so like, oh, okay, you want to smash? Before he pulls the gun out, what does this guy do? He pulls out an energy drink called Smash. Says, hey, you don't want to smash? You look like you wanted to smash. And immediately what happens? This other fella goes, it just calms down now. In other words, in any moment, you don't have total information. And because I don't have total information, I am subject to misinterpreting the situation. And when you misinterpret the situation, it gives you a corresponding result. It gives you a corresponding behavior. So this means that in any moment, it is not possible to make the perfect choice. Think about this. That's what we want for the most part. I want to make the perfect choice, the perfect teacher, the perfect class, the perfect partner, the perfect words to say, the perfect I'm sorry, the perfect I love you, the perfect coming together, the perfect holiday. There is no such thing as the perfect decision, because every decision is clouded by limited information. And when you make that decision, tomorrow, more information will come out. And then you will see that that decision yesterday has room for improvement. So rather than saying, I need to make the perfect decision, one needs to understand that I need to make a decision and course correct the more feedback I receive from Ishvara. The world will give you feedback. The moment you say something, the moment you do something, that's it. Now I need to wait for feedback to come to me. When that feedback comes to me, it will produce comfort or discomfort or anything in between. It's not that black or white, but anything in between. I can use that emotional indicator to tell how qualitative my action was. In other words, if there is comfort, and if my action was coming from lack of agenda, just doing what is to be done. No agenda, no need for manipulation, just doing for the keeping the well-being of the whole. When I receive the result, what kind of a result it is? There is comfort, there is union, there is friendliness, there is cheerfulness. If I was coming from, kind of a place of manipulating or having some agenda, or, I want this to be for me, and I'm not really that concerned about your well-being, then by the time I receive that result, that phalam will come back to you in some way, in some form, in some shape, and it will not be conducive to your cheerfulness. It will bring some kind of a conflict or some, heaviness or discomfort or dis-ease, and it will be felt somehow, somewhere, someplace. This is how cause and effect relationship works. This is how Ishvara is constantly showing you whether you have gone on track and whether I need to come back on track and continue this path. Constantly being shown what is to be done next, but a decision needs to get made. Okay, so situational question is the first. The second is the fundamental question. The fundamental question that once your situational matter has been relatively resolved and you have a relatively okay life to, right? You got a job, you got security, there's not too many pressures at your work, a relationship is well keeping in order, right? Things are relatively smooth. Then I'm available, naturally the mind is available to start asking a second kind of question, and that is a bigger kind of question. Yat shreyaha syad nishchitam bruhi tat me. In other words, Arjuna is saying here, okay, so not only suppose I have a smooth life and my family is wonderful and I've got qualifications, I've got degrees, and I've got high amounts of education. Eventually the question comes, and that is, what of all of this? What of all of this? Okay, it's wonderful that I have Harvard, or Cambridge, or I've got all these big names attached onto my title, but what of all of this end of the day? Where is it all going? What's the purpose of living? Is it just to get one more degree, to show myself how I'm a well-educated man or woman, to rise up the hierarchy of the institution? What of all of this? Where is it all going? After all, death is going to equalize no matter who you are. We call death the great equalizer. You can have 20 qualifications, 20 degrees. Death comes, you're neutral. You have 1 degree, that comes, you're neutral. The great equalizer. What of all of this? We're all going to get equalized when we die, right? So what was the purpose of doing just doing the right thing, doing what is to be done? Isn't there a bigger question to life? Yes, there is. And the mind becomes subtle enough to take interest in this fundamental question. Until it is subtle enough, the moment you bring the fundamental question, where's the mind going to go back to? Question number 1, situational. And most of the world is at situational. It's just trying to make their life work. Even those, you will be surprised, who come to Vedanta, who come to Bhagavad Gita, how many are actually here for moksha? Hands up. In reality, most classes, right, are looking for question number 1. That means I just want to make my life, which is okay. I just want to make my life work and have a smooth ride here. But there is a fundamental question: is I want to, free myself from this cycle of taking on another form, like one more form. Again, you got to be a little child. You got to be held by your mom, which is lovely. But then you got to get punched by other kids and pulled hair by your brother or sister, right? Again and again and again, which is all good. But eventually you want to just, stop this kind of taking new forms, taking new bodies, taking new minds. And you say, okay, what is something much bigger here than security, entertainment, and doing the right thing and going to heaven? And that is my total limitlessness. I want to gain. You're not losing out on anything, by the way. Moksha is not losing out on anything. It is gaining everything. I am tired of just gaining one single body. It is now time to, right, make some course corrections to recognize my true nature, and thereby I can understand this universe and we're not different. There is one reality, which I am, and we enjoy the same reality because there's only one reality. And this understanding has to take place. Therefore, these two questions, situational, and question number 2, coming home. Coming home. Not here, this home or that home, but universe is your home. All this time, you have been born in somebody's home. Call your parents' home, your friend's home, your real estate agent's home. In fact, it was never your home. Did you build your own house? No, you just move into somebody else's house. The house was there way before. And even if you did build your house, those bricks, did you build those bricks? No, you just put the bricks together. In other words, it was never your home, no matter what home you really moved into. Now it's time to come to my real home. And that home is the whole universe. In fact, the home is in me. I'm not inside the home is in me. So this is moksha, this is liberation. And the text focuses on both of these questions because they are eternal, beginningless questions. So they don't just apply back then, they always will apply. And therefore, Arjuna puts his faith in Krishna to help him understand these two questions. Verse 8. Nahi prapashyami mama panudyad yacho kamucho shanam indriyanam avapya bhumavasapatnam ridham rajyam suranam apichadhipatyam. Here Arjuna says that, hey, Krishna, I cannot figure out how to free myself from the sorrow. I leave it up to you because you have, right, the knowledge which I need to gain clarity of what is to be done. That means situational and the fundamental question I also want to understand. So this means that if you're asking, how is the Gita, which took place thousands of years ago, how is it applicable to today? The answer is,
yeah, because it is dealing with, it is firstly timeless. It is dealing with both everyday living, very honorable everyday living, and the final question of obtaining moksha.
Exactly. So these two questions are universally applicable. We all have a time when we're kind of ruffled or something unexpected happens, and you need to find a course correction back onto, right, the right mode of living. And you just want to, right, discover that mode and stay on that mode, which is helpful. It's helpful for all of us to live a relatively comfortable life. And second of all is when you have a comfortable life, then you're still asking, or you come to a point of asking and you say, what is more than just, right, doing like living, which is all fine, but is there more to this life? And therefore, these two questions are something that every human being in this world will eventually come to ask. And then the next verse, Sanjaya will recount to Dhritarashtra that Arjuna is broken down and is asking Krishna for help. I'm going to do verse 9 and 10. Sanjaya uvacha evam uktva hrishikesham gudakeshav parantapaha nayotsya iti govindam uktva tushnim babhuvaha. Verse 10. Tamuvacha hrishikeshaha prahasan niva bharata senayor ubhayor madhye vishidantam idam vachaha. Okay, so it's the same idea here. So Sanjaya is telling Dhritarashtra that Arjun has given up his arms and is now asking the teacher for a help regarding these two questions. And how does Krishna begin to teach? Prahasan iva bharata, with a smile on his face. Not a sadistic one, like a gentle smile, because he doesn't want to scare off Arjun. In other words, why would Krishna be having a gentle smile? Why do you think? What's the symbolism of this?
He probably kind of empathizes or understands where Arjuna is coming from, and that is probably everyone's state, right? So maybe it's a smile of compassion and understanding to say, yes, I understand what you're saying. And then he wants to give his.
Yeah, I think it's like, like parents or father or mother, smile. It's like, when the child asks something silly and they hear it and they find it like childish. So that's the reaction like a parent has that, okay, let me tell him after this.
Okay, nice. Pankaj?
What I feel is Krishna is smiling because what Arjun is asking is very routine. Anyone would ask such a question. It is a very normal question, very usual kind of thing to happen.
Okay. So what I think is that the reason why he's having this gentle smile is because Krishna understands that the context is right. The two fundamental questions, two eternal questions have finally been asked. The context is perfect, and the eternal teaching can finally begin, which will begin to bless thousands upon thousands of generations from now on. And by the help of Arjun, and all of the war of the Mahabharata has facilitated that happening. And now God's teaching has evergreen, ever true teaching can finally begin and start blessing us. And since how long has this teaching taken place? Not just Mahabharata, this is beginningless teaching. And that beginningless teaching can now again begin to be taught in this cycle of creation. And it will bless us all. Now, your homework is this. Which question do you think Krishna is going to begin or is appropriate to start answering to Arjuna? Question number one, hey, Arjuna, here's what is to be done. Here's how to solve this situation. Or question number two, the more fundamental question. Which question do you think is appropriate to help Arjuna in the best possible way? And why do you choose that question? The fundamental or the situational? This is your homework. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnam eva avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.